Kelly, let's just start with it. I feel like I spent this morning trashing Chris Paul. Not at all my intent, but like the current iteration of Chris Paul is not a difference maker for the Clippers. So, how big of a deal is this to you?
It's a big deal because of the name Chris Paul, but in actuality, the Clippers have been a mess this season. It's not really a surprise. Over the summer, whenever he came back to Los Angeles, this was supposed to be a beautiful homecoming, the place where he's from. Well, the place where he calls home, and joining an older, experienced Clipper team, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, adding John Collins, Brook Lopez. This was supposed to be the beginning of something great for the Clippers. One last shot, if you will, at chasing a title. But as you can see this season, the injuries, inconsistencies, the offensive efficiency has been way down. This is just a bad team. So Chris Paul's only averaging like 14, 15 minutes a game, and he looked a shell of himself, this season. So he should have retired maybe a couple seasons ago, if you wanted to be honest. But I think them officially parting ways is the beginning of the fragmentation of this team.
Yeah, that's what we said. That is just the first of many dominoes to fall. The Clippers have
Yeah.
much bigger fish to fry. But when we look at Chris Paul, he will be eligible to be traded on December 15th. Will he be traded? And what landing spot makes sense for him at this point in his career?
I mean, if you're going to look at the NBA market and see what teams could use a point guard, honestly, the Houston Rockets make a lot of sense because if Fred's not going to come back anytime soon, they still need some guard depth on the rotation. You could look at a team like Minnesota that's looking for a point guard as well. You could look at a team like Charlotte that's looking for some point guard upgrades as well. But I think the best thing for Chris Paul is just to stay at home. I think it's clear that he's still a talented NBA player because this is Chris Paul and everything he's done up until this point in his career. But in actuality, is he going to be a difference maker on a title team at this point of his career? I don't think so. So if he wants to just still continue to be in the NBA locker rooms and continue to mentor young players, there's still a role for him. I think he's one of the smartest players to ever touch a basketball in the history of this game. But as far as impacting basketball at a high level, I think those days are long gone.
So you said this is just the beginning. What's next? Like somebody like Harden, what kind of value does he have around the league?
So I know the Minnesota Timberwolves are one team that has checked in on James Harden. If you look at a guy at age 36, averaging 26, 7, and 6, at that high level of production for that age is remarkable. So you understand why, teams would be checking in on him, especially with the Clippers situation right now. The problem is that the Clippers at this stage, from what I understand, if they're going to break this thing down, they need a ton of draft picks. I'm not sure how many picks James Harden is going to fetch right now at 36 on the market, even at the high level he's playing. So he's someone that I think teams will continue to monitor because the Clippers are where they are in the standings, and he is still an all-star level type talent. But in terms of their actual return, I'm not sure if he's actually worth on the market what the Clippers would like to get if they choose to move on from him.
Oh, look, I hear you. They need picks. The Clippers need picks desperately, especially
Right.
when, not if, but when they tear everything down. Do you think there is a level of hesitation or pause, though, the Clippers might have to acquire those picks in fear of those picks being taken away for, the aspiration of it all?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. That's kind of like the overhead cloud that's looming over this franchise this season. People thought that if the Clippers started fast, that kind of stuff might go away in terms of like it wouldn't be much of a distraction. But the worse that they've become, the more that their off court issues have come to the surface. So any move that the Clippers want to make between now and the trade deadline, it has to be scrutinized through that lens because that's still a thing that they have to address at some point. The league has to finish that investigation. Adam Silver has a lot to deal with in terms of that. So that's going to be hanging over their head until all this is done.
All right, Kelly, let's look at some of the non-Clipper news right now. Zion out indefinitely with the right adductor strain. It just feels like it's one thing after another. At this point, are we ready to call him the biggest bust in NBA history?
I think it's up there. I think, especially if you go back to NBA history and you look at the number of players that have signed $200 million deals, I don't think any other player has ever had the amount of non-guaranteed money that Zion does. And that just stems from a lack of trust. Like he has to play a certain percentage of games played to get that money. He has to have a certain weight to get that money. He's only played like 224 games in 7 years. That's not even a 40-game average. It's not even a 30-game average. Like, we're talking about a guy that's never available. And I think right now it's best if both parties just part ways. The Pelicans are bad, but if you look at developing their queen, you look at developing Jeremiah Fears, you could even throw Sadiq Bey in. That there are still things to like about this team moving forward. But Zion, if he's your most attractive asset at 25, maybe you can still get something back for him. I'm not saying it's going to be a wholesale return, but if you can get 50 cents on the dollar at this point, just cut your losses. Or I wouldn't be surprised in the summer if they just outright waive him and just start fresh, because this has to end at some point. This is a toxic situation. He's never available. When he is, the attitude isn't great. It's just not going to work out long term. So if there's a way to cut ties, they should do it immediately.
Man, it does not feel that long ago that at Pelicans HQ, they were throwing papers up in the air and cheering and celebrating over winning the draft lottery for the opportunity to draft Zion. And now here we are talking about the biggest bust in NBA history. It's brutal for the Pelicans. But another young star that's also limited is LaMelo Ball. Now, you reported a couple of weeks ago about his future with the Charlotte Hornets. What is the latest on LaMelo's future? Is it in Charlotte?
I think it's a wait and see right now. I think they're 2-8 in the last 10 games. Head coach Charles Lee has talked about. He's actually praised LaMelo for the attitude in terms of returning from a minutes restriction. The problem is that he's just not shooting the ball well at all. He's been benched a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. The offensive plan that Charles Lee has in place, on paper, it actually looks fantastic with off-ball screens, delay actions for LaMelo, having him use the ball less. The problem is if he's not shooting the ball at a league average clip, there's no way this team can win games. And as a playmaker, he's still, among the best of the best. I think he's averaging like 45% of his teammates' assists. And I think the pick and roll chemistry with Kalkbrenner isn't as great as the one with Diabate. The moving pieces that they have, everything funnels back to LaMelo Ball. And if he's shooting less than 30% from three, less than 45% from two, it's really hard to put together a winning program. So the frustration is only going to mount, as long as this keeps happening. So it's going to be a wait and see.
All right, we're gonna figure out how to solve the entire NBA here. Kelly Blue Book is what you that's what you look at when you want to trade a car, right? When you want to know whether or not to make a trade in the NBA, you consult the Kelly Eco Blue Book. That's what we're going to do here. So we'll go through. We're going to give you some names, and you figure out if it's time to trade them or to keep driving. All right, we're just trading or waiting. That's what we're going to do. Let's start with somebody we debate a lot on this show behind the scenes. Ja Morant. Trade him or keep driving?
Trade him. The Grizzlies are clearly moving in a new direction under Isalo. You're seeing Cedric Howard building around Zach Edey, building around Jalen Wells, Vince Williams Jr. Operating as a de facto point guard. It doesn't look that bad. And Ja Morant is such a unique talent that if a system isn't entirely devoted to him and his skill set, it's kind of hard to see how both sides can move forward. So he's still at the age where if you trade him, you can get, maybe 2 first-round picks, maybe some young players come in the mix, and you can really help this Grizzlies team because they're only they're like 3 games below 500 in the West. That's still pretty good considering what they've had to endure this season. So if you can get some picks for him, some players, cash him in.
Now, look, you said it. He's a special talent because he is. He is a star in this league. But trading for Ja Morant also understands trading for the extracurriculars that come with Ja Morant. So what's a landing spot that makes sense for Ja?
Ironically, I thought it was going to be New Orleans. Earlier in the season, I thought pairing him with what I thought was going to be a healthy Zion, because he played like 10 games this season. I thought that was going to be something. But I would look at Minnesota. Like if you want to have him a new start, a new lease of life, playing with Anthony Edwards, playing in a free-flowing system, playing for a head coach that's going to empower you, I think that would be a fantastic spot for Ja Morant. Now, going back to what you said about the extracurriculars, not sure if you can do that in Minnesota. If anybody's been to Minnesota, I'm not sure if that's the place for extracurriculars. So I think you'd be just fine over there.
God, you are so right. Minnesota's a place where you can't even get in trouble if you try to. What about Lauri Markkanen? Trade him? Keep driving.
Trade him too. And this is man, every year he's the one guy that you see in these rumors where you could theoretically fit him on any team. The two teams I have in mind, particularly for me, Detroit and San Antonio. Detroit for the sheer purpose of giving Cade Cunningham a true Robin. I know Jalen Duren has played fantastic, but giving him a legitimate floor spacing weapon, averaging over eight threes a game, shooting above 36%, giving you 28 points a game. I think you can't argue with that. Now, pairing Lowry with Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio would be a basketball nerd's dream. I'm sure that the Jazz would ask for heaven and earth in terms of the first round picks, the pick swaps, and the players. But if you're the Spurs or if you're the Pistons and you're in this position, why not? Like, this thing only happens once or twice in the lifespan of an organization. And if you have a chance to capitalize on a young player, young talent that can elevate your ceiling, you do it. So I say trade him.
What about Trae Young? He's been out with a knee injury, but Atlanta's been able to hold their own. So trade or keep driving on Trae Young?
I would keep driving. I think the good thing about this injury or the absence that you're allowed to see what Jalen Johnson looks like in an elevated playmaking role. And he's been absolutely fantastic in terms of just his command of the offense in the half court, as well as being an elite rebounder, an elite scorer, a three-level option. Pairing him with Trae Young should be the beginning of what should be a sustainable, campaign for the Hawks. Now, does that mean when Trae Young comes back, he has to dial some things back and put some more load onto Jalen Johnson? Probably, but that shouldn't be. I mean, if you go back to a couple of years ago, that's what Trae Young was asking for in the first place. He wanted some help. He wanted someone to help take the pressure off of him. So Jalen Johnson clearly is that guy, but you have to see what it looks like for a bigger sample size. You can't just cut ties, at the quarter mark of the year. So I would say keep driving.
All right, before we get you out of here, you recently wrote about the Lakers and how Luka's become the system in LA. All right, so the question is, are the Lakers going to have issues balancing roles for Luka and LeBron when they get to actual, real competition on their schedule?
From an offensive standpoint, I don't think so. I think the real issue is defensively. They just don't have the talent to, get after some of these guards in terms of point of attack defenders, guys that can get under screens, the guys that can communicate with others on the floor. Offensively, they're going to be fine when you have Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves. It's clear that Luka is the main guy. Austin Reeves should be the number 2, and LeBron should be the third option on this team. Offensively, they're going to figure it out, right? I know Rui complained about him getting one shot early in the week against Phoenix. That's going to work itself out. Defensively, I think they're 17th. JJ already talked about that the team wasn't as bad defensively as the numbers suggested. They are. So if you want to improve, if you want to be a real contender in the Western Conference, you're not getting that with the 18th ranked defensive efficiency. So until they really get after at the end of the floor, you're going to see more games like that.